Welcome back to Lipany for another casted game. On the west side of the map in the pink, we have Mena 6448 as the English, going for 4 early farms. Wow, this is not a build order I've seen very recently, but that's going to make those sheep last a lot longer, so hopefully we're going to see some very aggressive scouting here from our English player. On the east side, we have Falkon in the teal as the Holy Roman Empire, and Falkon sent me this particular match to take a look at, so they said that I would find this very, very interesting, so I'm really excited to see what happens in this one. So if we take a look at the scouting path, we can have a look at what they're doing and go from there. So Lipany is always an interesting one in terms of scouting because of those cliffs. You actually never know what you're going to get. So some players will decide to be very conservative and just get the sheep around their base just to make sure they get back in time and they actually get some sheep. Others will be more aggressive. And obviously because Mena has those early farms and has gone for 4 this time, they're able to basically go as far as they like, and the sheep that they've got will probably last them until they've even started aging up. If we head over to Falcon's side, he has been quite reserved, just shy of the centre, and then going around their base. Are they going to get that one there? Almost. There we go. Okay, perfect. We didn't miss that poor little guy. So only got 3 so far, but has managed to nab all these sheep, so Mena's not going to be able to come and grab all of those, and will probably do pretty well on this side. So talking about this matchup then, I think it's actually really interesting because both of these civilizations are really strong at the moment. English is prolific on the ladder. If you've been playing this season, you'll have seen them loads and loads and loads. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to see how both players decide to go with this, because for both of these you can do fast castle, you can do feudal aggro, there's 2 TCs, there's all different kinds of stuff, and especially with the marching drills buff for the Holy Roman Empire and the king buff that the English got, both of these civilizations have been performing very, very well on the ladder recently. And so I think it's going to be also very interesting in terms of the units, because it's important to remember that both of these civilizations get feudal men-at-arms, and some civilizations don't have men-at-arms in the feudal age, and that can actually cause a lot of problems, because although they're not as strong as they are in castle, they can sometimes be more difficult to counter. So I think having both of those civilizations, having them available, I think is really interesting. So it's not going to be a unit-based victory, let's say. So Falcon has gone for the classic Archon Chapel, and if we take a look at the positioning, we've got the gold. We probably also could push the deer in this top side if we wanted to. It's basically got this whole front wood line. Also probably gets the stone as well, maybe just about it outside, and the prelate here is currently buffing up these guys that are on wood. Over on Mena's side, we can see the Abbey of the King going up, so we're going to be seeing that King going out to do a poke. So I'd imagine we're going to be seeing the classic 2TC meta, but maybe I'll be surprised by a little fast castle. Who knows? So the Archon's going up slightly faster. We've got 6 on the age up compared to the 3 for the Abbey of the King, and we've got a lot going on wood for Mena, so it looks like that TC is where we're going to be aiming, unless they're going to be chucking down an absolute ton of farms. The Archon Chapel is up, and so now we can see the prelates going inside, and that's going to be buffing up all of this nice little radius. If we take a look, we've also got lots of people on wood, and we already have a barracks down. So are we going to be seeing some men-at-arms popping out? Potentially. There we go. The first one's in queue. And when you see HRE drop a barracks in feudal age, you know there's going to be a men-at-arms coming out, because, you know, why build a spear when you can have a men-at-arms? So it looks like we're going to be seeing a little bit of feudal action, which I think is always exciting. And if we head over to Mena's side, we've actually seen another farm drop down, so actually going for extra farms. Not sure why we've got all of these early farms, but maybe it's just to secure that safe eco if they've seen the barracks go down. But I guess this, with the buff that English get from their mill, because they get that extra 15 or 20% once they hit feudal, it does actually make quite a big difference to their eco, so it's going to make their food really go quite far. So we've got 10 on wood so far, nothing on stone just yet, so we might just be waiting to counter out these units, and the men-at-arms just making their way over and hanging out by the relic and the sacred site in the centre. So if we head over, we've also got an archery range drop down now, so we've got men-at-arms and archers, and as I mentioned with those marching drills, you can see how fast they actually are. 1.24 is super fast, and I know sometimes these numbers don't really mean much, but I assure you that's fast. And now we've got one that's gone back on the gold, so I think Falcon's played this really well, gone heavy on the wood so you can get your production up, and then actually gone back on gold afterwards. So no eco techs in for either player just yet, but Mena is actually still going for that gold. And we can see 2 stables dropping down now. So I do quite like this play for the English when you get the king, which has literally just popped out, you've seen. When you've got horses, because of the mobility of all of these units together and the mobile healing that the king can do, having your horses and then getting a little gang of them, I've seen this quite a lot in the Castle Age with knights where they accompany the king and they literally dive into the eco and then they dive out and they heal up and go back in. A bit like French knights with chivalry. But here we go. We can see the first engagement with the king there, and he's being caught by it. Look how fast these guys are. So even when he runs away, he's 1.69. These guys are actually just a little bit slow, but look how well they're keeping up considering that knight is cavalry. So Mena's going to have to be really careful with the micro on that knight, otherwise the king is going to be definitely taken out pretty quickly. And we can see the military numbers are starting to pop out, and this is where I think the HRE eco really starts to play a big factor, because with that Archon Chapel buff, where you get the additional inspiration, they are going to be gathering so much faster, 40% increase, and they also carry more automatically as well. So yeah, even though we don't have any wheelbarrow or other eco techs yet, they're already going to be gathering a whole lot more. And we've also seen some more farms go down now, and even more here, so I think maybe scouting out those early units has made him a little bit nervous. So all of that wood has gone on these farms, which I guess is going to be safe, which means that they're not going to be able to dive as easily. But we can see here these gold villagers are exposed, and they're getting hit by the men-at-arms, and look at that damage. And even though the English TC does fire out quite a lot more, these men-at-arms are going to be able to take a lot of that damage. But now the spear's gone, these horses are going to be a lot more dangerous to these archers, so Falkon is going to have to be really careful. I think Mena probably could have done with a little short wall on the back here just to stop that rotation. So one of the things when you're getting raided early is you want to be able to stop them rotating in every direction, because if you can stop this here, the only place they can attack you is from the front, or they have to go all the way around your base the other side. So I think that's good. And the king, there we go, catching another barracks going down next to the blacksmith. So we're going to be seeing some military techs there for Falkon as well to boost this. So it's not going to be a little push into castle. We're going to be seeing this feudal going on for a little while, I think. And these numbers starting to look pretty scary. 18 to 9. Obviously, the horses are really mobile, but they are just defending at the moment. So I think this is potentially going to be a difficult situation if Mena can't do some damage to the HRE eco. So we see the horses have now scouted out these units behind, but they do have some spears in there, so he's going to have to be really careful that those horses aren't taken out before they can do damage to the archers. And this is where horses are really difficult, I think, to micro personally, because those spears actually do a huge amount of damage in the feudal age, so you've got to be really careful. If the king can come and get these, they're going to be able to restore them, but look, even just that little bit, that's that horse down there. So this is where the horses have to be controlled really, really well. And now Falkon is adding in a load of spears to keep doing that damage to the cavalry. So we've got more horses coming over here, and then just a stream of HRE units following them, chasing them down, and just, I can't believe actually how fast they are. I've forgotten how how good marching drills actually is. And if we take a look at the eco techs along the top while we follow this action, we can see that Mena's gone for wheelbarrow and double broadaxe, so that's going to be giving a nice boost. And he is also on the stone, so it looks like we are actually going for a slightly delayed TC. So I think this is something that a lot of players often don't do is if they're planning on going for the 2TC, that they delay it to actually prevent this early aggro. So I think this is actually quite a clever move here from Mena, and it looks like the king is going in and doing a little bit more damage to Falkon's eco while he's busy sending out all these units. But you can see on the map here, there's a load running over in the center, there's some at the back here, so he's all over the place with this infantry. And whereas with infantry you'd usually expect to be held up in one place or really quite slow moving around the map, with that marching drills they're really shooting across and able to regroup very quickly, which I think is working in his favour. So we're seeing all of these villagers back on wood now, trying to get enough to go up and get that TC. So looking at the position, I guess you could put it safe on the gold here and wall up, and then you'd be super safe. And you'd also be able to protect this wood line. Maybe they'll be super aggressive and go on the deer, potentially. And the berries, that's good for food, but potentially a little bit dangerous. We'll just have to see in a minute when they go up. But these horses, the 9 horses compared to that, and we can see the king. Oh no, the king found a spear, and unfortunately the spear had his lunch. So if we look at the military count now, we can see there's 17 units for Mena, and they're coming out quite quickly, getting those longbows in to counter the spears. And then we can see that Falkon is adding in a lot of his own archers. He's got a couple of men-at-arms, and I think mixing in a couple of men-at-arms with these spears is really good because they can tank a lot of damage. And unless you're really good at target firing in this mass here, it's much more difficult to catch them out alone. And so here we go, the horse is coming in for a dive, and now pulling back through the stealth forest. And this is really clever actually when you're facing longbows, because if they don't have vision on you while you're in the stealth forest, they can't actually shoot you. So sometimes moving through these little stealth forests can actually do a huge amount in terms of saving and kiting yourself, because you can still have vision on them. And this is where the spears and that are just taking out the longbows and all those horses, and that brace has just caught all of those horses there. So I think that's done a huge amount of damage to the military. And unfortunately now the archers here, unlike longbows, don't have enough to dive these farms, so they are safe for the moment. But we do see a TC going up on the deer, so he's been quite aggressive with his placement. I think with the 40 units sitting in the middle, this may be a bit dangerous. I personally probably would have gone for a slightly safer one, but I'm a coward, so what do I know? We can see here that we've finally got wheelbarrow, and we've got the first ranged damage and the ranged defense, so that's going to work really well with this archer blob that he's got, as well as defending against the longbows, because English can mass those up quickly. And see, even here, just diving just a little, doing a little bit of damage and idling that economy, because idling that food economy is going to do a huge amount of damage overall. And there we go. So now idling the wood line, circling around like this, I think is great. And unfortunately, Mena's army there is slightly out of position trying to defend that TC at the back, and has left his eco a little bit undefended. So if we go into the cinematic to see this, we can see those archers from the HRE doing a huge amount of work, and all of the other units are then being slowly whittled down by the speedy little HRE boys. So now, although the TC is firing out an absolute ton of arrows and doing a little bit of damage, the economy is very idle for Mena. So this is definitely in a bit of a rough position, and I think potentially that having that military out of place here at the back, and also having the TC in such an aggressive position, has actually made this push much more effective for Falkon there. So although going under the TC that much, a little bit aggressive. Also one thing too, that Mena does have the Abbey of the King, so it doesn't have a king at the moment, but you do still get the aura healing around it. So taking fights here for Mena actually is way better, because you've got the TC fire and the healing aura. So definitely just outside of that over here is you could reposition a little bit, I think, as well. So we can see more units coming across here, and some rams coming down, so siege engineering clearly gone through. And also, unfortunately, because they're chopping so much, this open wood line at the front is very exposed, because it's now out of TC range. So Mena's going to have to be really careful that these villagers don't get picked off, while the rest of his army is now regrouping. And so these 45 strong units against the 3 longbows are looking really scary. And 2 rams coming down, I imagine we're going to be seeing them charging straight at this second TC to make sure that that eco buff doesn't start paying off, while he's also out on the deer over here and building up his eco at home. So no walls out on the boar, so Falkon is living his best HRE life. And so we can go in now just to see the rams charging across and the units following with them, and they're not all going for the TC. Interesting, I love this. So separating to idle the army and the eco over here while the rams go over to try and do some work there. So this is a big investment, so hopefully those villagers don't pop over and start torching. But I think that was the final straw for Mena, and clearly if you're looking for a way to beat the King 2TC that's on the ladder at the moment, going for the HRE feudal pressure is definitely the way to go. And here we are then, back just before the end of the game to do a little review of the gameplay as these guys build up the rams. And I don't know if you've ever noticed the little animation of the people running around building it. I just, some of these little finer details I've only noticed when I've started casting these games, and I just think it's pretty amazing. But if we pause it here, then let's take a little look at the map and the game plan that both of these players had. So Mena was going for the classic English King 2TC, and then added in horsemen and longbows to counter Falcon's units. So I think the synergy of the horses and the king are actually really, really nice together, because they have that added mobility. You can do a lot of raiding and then the king will heal them, whereas when you have the king with infantry, either the king has to be really slow or he's separate doing his own thing. So I actually think that's quite nice. And then when you get to Castle Age, having the king with a load of knights that can run in and out and heal and stuff, I think that's particularly strong, especially for raiding and harassing your opponent. Obviously English longbows are English longbows, I don't think we really need to talk about those. I think going for the super delayed second TC may have been a slight mistake, or could have actually been used in a different way. So obviously the instead of going straight for the stone during the feudal age up and then being safe on the wood line to basically drop a super secure TC, Mena went for lots of these early farms. I think there were 4 initially, and then adding in all of these ones. So if you look at these, you've got 11 farms, so that's 400 wood almost. So then if you think that's actually enough wood for a TC, if you'd have saved all of that wood and then just got the stone initially, dropped it on your gold, then your TC would protect your wood line, your second TC would protect your gold, you could even just wall in there, and you'd be safe to drop your farms and do whatever other stuff that you like. Also the problem with going horsemen in this matchup is because HRE get those marching drills, it means that those spears are actually even more deadly, because horses are very difficult to micro. The pathing is actually pretty bad, so they often get caught by spears quite easily, and the spears being that much faster means they're even more likely to get you. So you need to be really good at sniping those out with your longbows. And because of all the resources that were spent on this TC, which is actually in a very super aggressive position considering you're surrounded by all of these HRE units, this meant that he just wasn't able to get the mass to combat Falkon, who just went for pure units. So I don't think necessarily that Mena couldn't do anything about this, but I think spending the resources on a TC and on all these farms, potentially, instead of those, if they'd been a lot of longbows and horses, potentially could have turned the tide the other way, as well as getting men-at-arms to counter the men-at-arms, of course. If we take a look at Falcon's side, he's gone very, very feudal all-in. So we've got the Aachen Chapel, and one of the things I noticed while I was watching this game is that he pulled off gold completely and then slowly added back in, so that he could focus on getting his production down, and he had just enough gold to start getting the men-at-arms out early. So I think that worked really, really well. And because he's pinned Mena into his base, he's been able to go on the deer up here, the deer at the top, the boar down here. So there's no walls or any defensive structures, because to be honest, he doesn't really need it. And this Aachen Chapel is still buffing up all of that wood line. It also gets the deer, so even though putting your Aachen very far forward sometimes can be a bit of a risk, with Lipany and with this particular spawn, actually he was very, very lucky that even if he needed to be a bit defensive, he could just do a couple of short walls around here and protect it relatively easily. But I think the fact that Falkon just went completely all in and basically just kept constantly pushing and pushing, it meant that Mena wasn't actually able to get out, apart from doing a couple of little pushes onto the berries here and catching 1 or 2 villagers with the king. But because the king got taken down fairly early, it's just been a very defensive play here from Mena. So I think a particularly strong strategy, and if you're looking for a way of combating the King English 2TC, then I think this is potentially the way to go. But I hope you've enjoyed this Conqueror level action, and I'll see you in the next one for more exciting Age of Empires.